Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Farmington Board of Education special meeting for December 9th, 2024. I'd ask we all stand and for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So now we're going to honor someone very special in the Farmington Public Schools, Assistant Superintendent Kim Nguyen, who's sitting very far away at the end of the table. It's really bittersweet for all of us. For the last 12 years, Kim and I worked together as a superintendent and assistant superintendent team. It's really been an honor to work alongside Kim. Her service to Farmington has been truly impeccable. As someone who is an exemplar for really owning the improvement work here and enacting that work each and every day. She served as an initiator and a designer of our improvement documents, which drive all that we do with students each day within the instructional core, which is our classrooms. The work has been truly invigorating, visionary, and playful, reflecting the very best that public education can offer. Kim's legacy lives within each one of us. She has cultivated our collective learning, improvement, and equity-focused innovation, as well as our unique gifts as educators and as students. She's heard this quote before, but Kim, in my opinion, is an illuminator. And this is what David Brooks says about that. I think I might have said something about this in my student video too. So this is what David Brooks says. Being open-hearted is a prerequisite for being a full, kind, and wise human being. The real process of, say, building a friendship or creating a community, which Kim helped to create here, involves performing a series of small, concrete actions well. Illuminators, David Brooks shares, have a persistent curiosity about other people. They've been trained or have trained themselves in the craft of understanding others. They shine their brightness of their care on people and make them feel bigger, respected, and lit up. So much of what David Brooks describes is Kim's way of being as a person, as an educator, and as a leader. For over 40 years, Kim has made us feel respected, bigger, lit up, and when you feel that way as a person, an educator, or a student, you can accomplish the extraordinary. We thank Kim so much. We're going to miss you. And we hope to continue your work and make you proud each day. I do see there's some special people in the audience. Kim's husband, Bob, and Chloe and Kelly, graduates of the Farmington Public Schools, and her daughters. We just are so happy that they're here to share this goodbye, but not really goodbye. It's just, you're going to see us again. Yes. You'll probably work here continually because we'll always need your help in some way. But I don't know if the students know this, but Kim is an extraordinary writer and has really helped after getting input from the community, from students, from teachers. She is the one who wrote the vision of the global citizen after getting all of that feedback. And many of our other documents, like our core beliefs and our theory of action. So Kim is incredible. She is a designer and someone who is an architect in many ways. So I just wish you the very best and every happiness in your retirement. But don't go too far. Okay. And we have a proclamation.
Before we read the proclamation, I want to open it up to any comments from any colleagues on the board. Anybody want to say anything? Beth?
So Kim, I have to jot down some notes. We're so fortunate to have your dedication for all of your career here in Farmington Public Schools. You're just such a consummate professional with such a warm personality. I've always felt that you're just a natural, good listener who shows a tremendous amount of empathy as you go about things like planning and decision making. and working with colleagues and teachers and just across the board. You also have a great sense of humor. I've so much enjoyed our conversations and have learned so much over the years just in our little conversations and some of our work together, so I really appreciate that. But also your humility, I think, really lends itself to your being comfortable taking an honest look at where we've been at certain junctures, what our shortcomings were and the challenges and our strengths, but working that all together has given you a great insight for where we need to improve and kind of set our sights for the next steps. And then in the execution of all that too, your creativity, your optimistic attitude, and your importance on collaboration, it's just enabled this district to benefit so much from your thoughtfulness, your thoughtful planning, your inclusion of so many voices, and your persistence in reaching so many important and necessary goals for our district. So you're leaving quite a legacy, and we're so grateful. Just thank you for all of your hard work. I wish you so much, so great wishes for your retirement, and take time to enjoy and rest. But yes, don't go too far. Thank you. You're welcome.
So Kim, I feel very fortunate that I've had the opportunity to work with you on the curriculum committee, the Noah Wallace Fund, various interview committees, and then here at the board table. You are such a highly expert and caring educator. Working with you has certainly deepened my understanding and appreciation for Farmington's educational priorities and continuous improvement work, and always putting students at the center of decision making. I've, working with you has, I think even it's made me a better board member for sure, but I think also a better parent in terms of my kids' own education here in the Farmington School District. Congratulations on your retirement, and thank you for the 40 years of dedication to the Farmington Public Schools.
Anyone else? Before we have the proclamation, I did write down a few thoughts myself. And I just want to let you know how I feel about your work for the board and how you've made all of our jobs a lot easier and how you've made our town better. We celebrate and recognize an extraordinary individual in the conclusion of a 40-year commitment of dedicated service to the families of Farmington. Kim Wynn's name is on nearly all of Farmington's initiatives of the last decade. The initial drive to develop the 5-year goals and the subsequent work done over the last 10 years, the vision of the graduate, which is now the vision of the global citizen, the framework for teaching and learning, the move to Common Core, teacher evaluations, curriculum development, and I know I'm missing other things, all have Kim's handprints on them. It's fair to say that throughout your career, you've served as a guiding light embodying leadership that inspires your colleagues and compassion that transforms our students. While before my time, I know from talking to those that worked with you at West District, your classrooms were more than a place of learning. They were places of encouragement and respect. As you transitioned into a leadership role, you took that perspective with you and continued to consistently see the potential in every student, ensuring that the Farmington schools would nurture their growth and equip them for success no matter the challenges they faced. Now, of course, your leadership extended beyond the classroom. Whether mentoring new teachers, ensuring teacher professional development was on the cutting edge of 21st century curriculum, or just being there for teachers, principals, administrators, and staff. You've shown that leadership is not just about guidance, it's about service, empathy, and a commitment to lead with the heart. I would also be remiss if I didn't recognize some other things that you've done. You've helped establish priorities for teaching and learning, professional development, and overall school culture for our district. You've served as an educational leader countless times. You've developed and led seminars too numerous to mention. You've handled strategic recruitment and handling of onboarding new teachers. You led the district's initiative for the Community Council on Equity and Inclusion. And you were at the forefront of recognizing emotional learning and the need to include it as part of our curriculum before many other districts were even aware of what that was. As you can see, your impact on the district is immeasurable, and your legacy will long be a part of the Farmington schools. Your unwavering commitment has left an indelible mark on countless lives. Such longevity in education is not just a testament to endurance, but to a profound calling to make a difference in the lives of others. On behalf of all those you've touched, students, families, colleagues alike, We thank you for your extraordinary contributions. You're a beacon of excellence and a true example of what it means to educate with purpose and compassion. You will be missed, but not for much. You'll be around. Andrea?
Sure. I have a proclamation to read. Farmington Board of Education proclamation for Kimberly Wynn. Whereas Farmington Board of Education's mission is to enable all students to achieve academic and personal excellence, exhibit persistent effort, and live as resourceful, inquiring, and contributing global citizens. And whereas students in Farmington Public Schools effectively learn important academic content, demonstrate skills and achievement at high levels, and develop their individual talents and interests in an atmosphere that promotes belonging, respect, and lifelong learning. And whereas Kimberly Wynn has served as the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum, Instruction, and Human Resources for Farmington Public Schools since 2012, she has also served roles within the Farmington Public Schools, serving a total of 40 stellar years of service to the school district and students of Farmington. And whereas Kimberly Wynn's dedication to the children, families, faculty, and staff of Farmington has been unparalleled throughout her career, promoting high expectations, a student-centered approach, and deeper learning related to curriculum and instruction, as well as commitment to equity and innovation. And whereas Kimberly Wynn served as an exceptional leader who has utilized community input and feedback to assist in the design and implementation of Farmington's future-oriented core improvement documents, which drove continuous improvement pre-K through 12 in Farmington's aligning systems, structures, and improvement routines to these documents, directly impacting what students experience as leaders and agents of their own learning each day. As a result, students experience caring classroom environments and highly engaging learning tasks that promote students as self-aware individuals, empowered learners, disciplined thinkers, engaged collaborators, and civic-minded contributors. And whereas Kimberly Wynn's commitment to excellence has led to impressive results in student outcomes over the course of her career, aligned to an innovative instructional model and curriculum design, core beliefs, and vision of the global citizen, championing deeper learning experiences for all students that reflect high levels of student engagement, agency, and curiosity, aligned to real-world learning that have meaning and value to all learners. And whereas Kimberly Wynn has served as an outstanding and forward-thinking instructional leader in Farmington and beyond, as recently evidenced by her leadership in contributing to an innovative design of learning spaces at the new Farmington High School facility and hosting a deeper learning convening with educators from across North America here in Farmington. And now, therefore, I, William Beckert, on behalf of the Farmington Board of Education and the Farmington community, hereby commend Farmington Public Schools member Kimberly Wynn for her committed and compassionate work on behalf of our community, and I hereby thank her for her selfless dedication and commitment to quality education for the children of Farmington. Dated this 9th day of December 2024 at Farmington, Connecticut. William Beckert, Chair, Farmington Board of Education.
Oh my goodness, it's very hard to be the center of attention and things like this. I'm sorry for students having to listen to so many words about such a long history, but I have to say that never for a moment have I regretted spending my entire career in Farmington. And every single day, I am utterly amazed at what all of you do on the athletic field and the classroom. Our students in this district are just amazing, and my two daughters here are two of those amazing students who've now grown up and moved on with their lives. I just, 40 years, when you say it, it seems like unbelievable. Who would ever want to stay in one place for 40 years? But, you may not know my history, but I grew up moving a lot with a single mom who, we just needed to move around. And so as I became a mom, I was determined that my children were, if I could do it, were going to stay in one place and have greater stability and really invest in a community. And so Although Bristol is an amazing place, right, Dan? Dan and I both are graduates of Bristol High Schools. We decided to move to Farmington, and I have to say, I never needed to go anywhere else. And it's really about two things. It's about people, and it's about purpose. And purpose means we know what we're here for, and we're always, always looking out in front of us to see what's next. What do our students need? Where are their futures going? And how can we be more prepared so that they'll be prepared for their futures? And I just think it's the spirit of this district that holds the most excellent teachers here. We're always, thinking about who can we look to, what can we read, where can we go to be better. And this board leads the way in that. Your insights, your questions, you're always the ones encouraging us to do that work and bring it to you. So I thank you so much for that. And the second part is people. We just attract the best people in this district, and we have, people who not only have, we think we need the smartest people in Farmington to lead this work. So yes, we think about that as an important component, but we need people with a heart, people who care about students and each other. And growing up here as a teacher, I always felt like my colleagues and my administrators cared about me as a person and wanted me to grow, and look at all the amazing opportunities I had here. So I never for a moment, regretted staying in one place all this time. And I can't thank you all and your, the people who came before you in these seats, leading the way in this district, leading Farmington to be the best district in Connecticut and beyond, as Kathy says, in the universe. And I most especially want to thank Kathy for being an amazing promoter of mine, supporter of mine, someone whose vision is also a secret to our success. So I will just leave you with that thought about always having that and mindset, the tradition and innovation. We don't want to forget who we are and our history here in this district, but we always want to be looking ahead and looking forward and thinking about how we can provide the very best education for the very best students. So thank you so much to everyone. It'll be hard to walk away, but maybe not on these late Monday nights. I'll be home. Thank you so much.
Okay. With that being said, I think we'll adjourn at this point in time. Okay? We're adjourned. Good evening. I'm going to call the Farmington Board of Education regular meeting for December 9th, 2024 into order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. I'm going to ask for a motion to modify our agenda. If we could move from item 7A under new business, item A, Board of Education Leadership and Development Session, if we could move that up to item 5B. Can I get a motion for that?
Motion?
Can I get a second?
Second.
All those in favor? I'm sorry, any discussion? Comments?
Bill, I didn't hear you. What do you move? It's fine, but I just didn't.
Yeah, we're moving the Tom's presentation up in the agenda, so Tom's not here.
Yeah,
later
got it.
into the night.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Extension. Okay.
Oh, sure.
Yes, that's okay.
Thank you. Is this now?
Perfect.
Fine?
Perfect.
Good. Do you all have your packet?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to first say hello. I've met many of you through collective bargaining, but not others. And so it's my pleasure to meet some of the board members this evening. My name's Tom Mooney, and I represent boards of education. And it's been my privilege to represent the Farmington Board of Education for about 30 years, and hope to continue to do that for another 30 years or so. Let me just start with a simple question. Who here went to middle school? Is it unanimous?
Yes.
Okay. You may wonder why I ask, but you all, if you did, and you're all claiming to have gone to middle school, so that's when you all learned about the 3 branches of government. Okay, and so what are you? What branch of government are you as Board of Education members? Should we refresh on what the 3 branches of government are? Judicial. Okay. Executive.
And legislative.
And legislative. Very good. So you remember your middle school civics. So now the question is, what are you as a Board of Education? What branch of government
I know the answer
do
to
you
my
fulfill? Yeah, I prep Bill on this, so he can't answer. Anyone?
Legislative.
Legislative. Why do you say that?
Because it's policy and executive better schools and legislation that guides what happens. And
What does Congress do on a good day?
pass laws.
So that would be a good day. Congress passes laws. What else does Congress do on a good day? They pass a budget. And what do you do? What keeps you busy? I see on your agenda you have several policy initiatives. And a fundamental responsibility of the Board of Education is to adopt a budget. So that's a good answer. Do you ever serve an executive function?
Oversight, I would say.
I'm sorry?
I would say a little bit of oversight through the executive.
Oversight, and that's a very good word. I use that sometimes to try and explain, the important role boards play in school district operation. But there's a statute on this particular topic, and 10-157 of the Connecticut General Statutes defines the superintendent of schools as the chief executive officer. So there's a tension for boards of education because you're here at, as I understand it, no pay as citizen volunteers, giving of your time. And so when people come to you with problems, your first impulse is often to help. But quite often, the problems people come to you with are operational in nature. And that really is the responsibility of the superintendent. And we have some scenarios in the folder that I'd just like to go through to illustrate some of this. But before we do that, the 3rd branch of government is judicial. Do you ever serve a judicial responsibility? When?
Expulsions.
So you do student expulsions? Well, that's slightly different. What is a fundamental characteristic of a judge? What do you want when you say impartial? Correct. And so when you serve a judicial responsibility, it's critically important that you keep that in mind. And when I work with boards of education and talking about these responsibilities, I can't help myself but to recall the traumatic event that happened to me over 40 years ago when a superintendent of schools recommended that the high school principal be non-renewed. so far so good. That doesn't sound so dramatic, does it? Well, here's what happened. The high school principal invited 400 of his closest friends to the high school auditorium for the hearing, and it was a lot more crowded than it is tonight. Board is up on the stage, and the first thing the lawyer for the principal did is he called a board member to the stand. And he said, "Isn't it true that you told Sally at the Stop and Shop that you're going to get rid of my client?" Yes. There were 3 board members who had been in the community expressing opinions. Now, expressing opinions is a wonderful thing. It's a privilege we have under the First Amendment. But judges cannot express their opinions on pending cases. And so in front of 400 people, I watched this whole case collapse because 3 board members had rendered themselves incapable of acting as an impartial judge. Now, your judicial responsibilities include teacher tenure cases. Who can hire a teacher? Under statute, do you know who has the authority to hire a teacher? You're saying the superintendent? Well, that's true, but only because you've delegated that responsibility to the superintendent, as all school districts do. I mean, you have a lot of work on your plate, to have to worry about hiring teachers is not necessarily something you need to do. But the converse, who has the authority to fire a teacher? Only the board. Now, fortunately, this is not something that comes up often, but when it comes up, it can be a real problem. And as you can imagine, there are things that happen in school districts. Hopefully you're reading in the paper about some other school district where this controversial thing is happening. But people want to know what's your position. They come up to you in the store, "Hey, did you hear about the teacher who was arrested for whatever?" And it's very hard to resist having an opinion and sharing that opinion. But you have to be super careful in personnel matters or any judicial responsibility to keep your thoughts to yourself and wait for the appropriate time to listen as an impartial judge, and then make your decision on the information you receive at that hearing. Now, I get the questions, well, my kid came home, there was a food fight, and he told me about Johnny, how he threw a hot dog and hit the principal in the head, and now suddenly Johnny is before the board in an expulsion hearing. Can that board member who heard about Johnny throwing a hot dog act impartially and fulfill that board member's responsibilities? Well, the answer is yes, because the Supreme Court has understood that as members of the community, board members hear things, and it's, you're presumed, they assume good faith, that you can set that aside, listen to the evidence when you're fulfilling that judicial responsibility, and decide the matter on what you hear. But as soon as you're on Facebook or talking to other people and taking an active role in engaging in the particular situation, then you've lost that ability to be impartial. So we have student expulsion, we have teacher tenure hearings, student expulsion hearings, school accommodation hearings. Do you think a resident of Farmington has the right to actually go to court over where the bus stop is located? And what role do you play in that circumstance? School accommodations, that is the eligibility to attend school here in Farmington, is a right that people have if they're eligible. And sometimes we get into a fight about, well, are they eligible or not? I have had cases here in Farmington where, in fact, one of my funny stories, I teach school law at UConn, and I can't resist. At one point, this is years ago, I think before Kathy's time, so there was a dispute as to whether this particular family was entitled to attend school in Farmington or New Britain, because their house was right on the line. Right on the line. They built a huge deck so that the footprint of their house crossed over, and when you're on the property line, you can go either place. But back to your role in all of this, the parent who says, my kid's entitled, Kathy has the responsibility in the first instance to make those calls. And then Kathy says, I've determined you're not eligible to attend school in Farmington. And then the parent has a right under statute to have a hearing before you in 10 days. School accommodations hearing. And that's another situation in which you operate as an impartial judge. Then they have the right to a state hearing, and they have the right to go to court. But back to bus stops. Transportation is viewed as a fundamental element of school accommodations. How do you go to school if you can't get to school? And so whether or not this board has provided a particular family with reasonable transportation is part of school accommodations. And so if someone thinks the bus stop is in a too far or in a dangerous spot, they have a right to a hearing before you. And I say that without judgment, because I actually one time was in one of these bus stop hearings, and I'm not here. And they made us go stand on the bus stop. And it was scary. And they're, trying to figure out bus routes. They put this bus stop there, and we all agreed that it was not reasonable transportation. So those are the judicial responsibilities. People are going to engage you in, attempt to engage you in conversation about those responsibilities. You just have to say, it's not my job. I'm really not going to comment on that. Grievance hearings are a little different. Fortunately, we don't have a lot of board-level grievance hearings, but that's a contractual matter. The other issues involve property rights and due process. Grievances are collective bargaining. So the standards are not quite as rigorous. But that's just a brief introduction to your role. What we have in the packet is on the left, a little outline, legal rights and responsibilities, and behind it, a caution about email, which I'll talk about more because it's so critically important. And on the right-hand side, we have 5 scenarios. And I know that you have other items on the agenda as much as I enjoy talking with you. And we'll go through those, and I'll try and be out of here in, about half an hour? Does that work for you? But I also want to say I welcome your questions, and as we're going through this, I'm going to ask, actually this is kind of a Socratic exercise, so when we get to the scenarios, it's really your turn to tell me what you think the appropriate course of action is. And I say that with humility. The last time I was elected to public office was in 8th grade. You are all here because you're serving your community as elected members of the Board of Education. And so I can only tell you what I've seen, what I think works, but you have to decide for yourselves how you want to fulfill your public responsibilities. So jumping to the scenarios, we have scenario 1. 3 members of the Board of Education write a letter to the Valley Press, address the Farmington Public Schools community. In the letter, the board members talk about the upcoming budget, and they urge people to vote in support of the budget. The board members identify themselves as members of the Farmington Board of Education. Other board members see the post and are mad that the 3 board members did not let them know about it in advance. like their glory hole, right? They're out publicly, but not including anyone. So if a board budget referendum is pending, is this pose a violation of state law? And you've had your experiences with budget referendum. In fact, here we are in beautiful high school, approved through a referendum. But if a referendum is pending, can you still speak in favor of your budget?
I think you can, but only for a certain period of time, right? Isn't there like a...
There's what we call the quiet
Quiet
period.
period, right.
Once all the prerequisites for a budget referendum have been set, then a very specific law kicks in.
Right.
Are you saying, Bill, that once that law kicks in, you have to do it? You can't say no?
Well, that's how we always conduct ourselves.
Well,
We
that's
conduct
not-
ourselves in a way where we don't speak about the budget publicly, collectively, once the quiet period starts.
Well, I'm glad I'm here, because that's an overly restrictive view.
Okay.
And I appreciate your caution, because as you probably know, board members take action on behalf of the community, and every so often a claim can be made against you. And the question is, do I need my own insurance? The answer is absolutely not, because public policy and a specific statute protects you, the indemnification statute of claims made, and you've acted within your authority as board members, even if you might be wrong, you're fully protected and even legal fees are covered. So there's a strong public policy in favor of protecting board members. But this issue of referendum is the one area of the law where if there's a violation, it's expressly prohibited. The board cannot indemnify board members who are fined under the state law on referendum, which is 9369B, which says that no public official shall authorize the expenditure of public funds to affect a referendum result. And so you are perfectly free to speak out in favor of the budget at any time. You cannot, however, and your principals have to understand this as well, they cannot let school property be used. They can't even let a flyer advocating the referendum one way or the other to go out with kids, because that's viewed as the equivalent of a postage, in terms of a financial expenditure. So boards have to be very careful not to and in fact, if you have something on your website that advocates for your budget, and now it's coming around, you have to take it down, because that's viewed as an expenditure as well. But this scenario is also...
It's valid. It's on the ground.
Oh, is that where it is? Here it is, okay. So, did the three board members do anything wrong by writing a letter without involving the other board members? You're saying no?
Yes.
In part?
Yes.
You say yes. What did they do wrong?
Because they're speaking on behalf of the board.
Are they? And
They're
why do
not
you say
speaking
that?
on behalf of the board. They're only speaking partially.
They did identify themselves as members of the board,
Correct.
and so that would be the concern, that they're out there. I'm a member of the Farmington Board of Ed. This is a little complicated, because it could also be a problem in the converse. What if those three board members wrote this and didn't identify themselves as members of the board? Could they be then accused of being sneaky and advocating without identifying themselves? So it's a little tricky, and all I would suggest is that when you are speaking, you are members of the board, and you can be identified as such. But I think all board members would always want to be careful with a disclaimer. I'm speaking as a person. I'm not speaking on behalf of the board. Under your bylaws, who speaks on behalf of the board? The chair, right, and that's universal as well. But there's more to the story. Wouldn't it have been nice if those three board members reached out to the other board members to say, hey, you know, we're thinking of writing this letter to the Valley Press. Would you like to sign on? And you're shaking your head no.
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like I speak for myself always if I write something, I don't speak for others, so
Right.
that wouldn't be what my approach would be, I don't know what.
Okay. So you're saying is it okay for the three board, and you're saying it's not?
It all depends on what the quorum is.
I'm sorry?
It depends on the size of that board,
Yeah.
whether a meeting, other members would constitute a public meeting. If
Yeah.
it isn't, maybe they can get away with it. But if it's like, let's say here, if 5 people got together, that would be a board meeting.
Right, and what's the problem with that?
It's an illegal meeting, it needs to be notified, the public needs to be
Exactly.
noticed.
And so I use the scenario because this comes up actually not infrequently. And what happens is there's an issue of controversy that the board wants to address, and suddenly out of nowhere comes a public statement signed by the members of the Board of Education. And invariably, someone says, oh, that's interesting. At what meeting did you decide on that letter? And that's when the Board of Education apologizes and goes hands up at the Freedom of Information Commission. Whoops, sorry. So in these circumstances, the law expects and requires that you do your business in public. Now, less than a quorum can talk about whatever you want. As soon as a quorum is involved, then you're in a meeting. And the email caution, if I can do this without dropping it, the email caution includes the definition of a public meeting for your reference. And it's in the middle of the page. And a meeting under the Freedom of Information law is any convening or assembling of a quorum of a multi-member public agency, that would be you, or a communication prior to a quorum of that multi-member public agency, whether in person or by means of electronic equipment. And the next words are critical: to discuss or act upon. Sometimes the intuitive view is, well, we didn't make a decision, so who cares? But the law specifically defines a meeting as including any communication among a quorum to discuss. And that's why, and you're a sophisticated bunch, right? So I understand, I'll predict that you all know not to hit reply all. Kathy can send something out, Bill can send, anybody can send something out. That's fine. That's not a discussion. But as soon as someone hits reply all, then at what point along that path is it a discussion? I don't want to disappoint anyone here, but I have lost cases before the Freedom of Information Commission. One of them involved this very thing, where a board member was upset, wrote to the chair, copied all the board members. The board chair wrote back to the person, copied all the board members, and someone filed an FOI complaint. My argument at the commission was it was not a discussion among the board. It was just 2 people talking, and the other people were just listening. You're laughing at my argument. Well, they did too. They're very rigorous about this, so we just have to be super careful about reply all. So scenario 2. A board member is Facebook friends with a teacher. In a post on his Facebook page, the teacher complains that his principal unfairly denied him 3 days of personal leave to attend nature's classroom in a neighboring school district to serve as a chaperone for his 5th grade son. The board member calls the principal to find out what the problem is. You can picture it, right? What's the problem? And then the teacher files a grievance. Does the board member, and it gets up to the board level, does the board member have a conflict of interest such that the board member should not participate in that grievance hearing? Maybe?
I don't think so, because, I mean, they're just because they're friends with them, they didn't comment or interact. Did I miss that? Oh, they called the principals. There was
Yeah.
no comment.
Well, let me ask you this, let's
Okay,
take a
sorry.
threshold. This scenario, and we'll get into the answer, but it's really important just for all of you to consider this issue, because you make decisions on behalf of the public. So how do you define a conflict of interest? And when would you think it appropriate to what the lawyers say, recuse yourself, withdraw from the discussion? So who gets to decide if you have a conflict of interest? Pardon?
Just you.
Just you. So for example, if a board member is college roommates with this guy with this expensive contract pending before the board, could the board say, hey, Joe, it's your roommate. You guys go on vacation together. You have a conflict of interest. Can the board vote to tell that board member he can't vote because he has a conflict of interest? I'm sorry?
I don't know.
Should. Who gave each of you your power, and you have significant power on behalf of the public? Where does that power come from? It comes from the voters. And so the law of the matter is that only the board member can decide whether he or she has a conflict of interest, and the board cannot deprive a board member. The board cannot deprive a board member of his or her authority. That decision has to rest with the individual. So it's critically important. How do you decide? What goes into your thinking when you, maybe it's your second cousin twice removed? You have a conflict of interest?
We have a charter too that informs conflicts. I mean, I think the provisions in our town charter that
And
informs.
typically that would, the bright line is financial interest. What's not so bright is roommates and friends and enemies, because conflicts of interest are not just affection. You can have antagonism. And so how do you, what goes into your thinking in terms of what is or is not a conflict of interest? What is your job? Your job is to act on behalf of the public. Do circumstances you confront impair your ability to act on behalf of the public, whether it's an affection or an antagonism? Can you, this is back to this issue of this concept of impartiality, can you act impartially on behalf of the public and not on behalf of your friends or your enemies? And that's the question you have to ask yourselves. But there's a further question, and that is, notwithstanding the fact that I've searched my heart and I know that I can be impartial. In fact, yeah, he was my roommate last week. I don't even like the guy. I can be impartial. What? And I'm saying, let's just accept the premise. That board member can act impartially. Should that board member act in that case? Or is there an appearance of conflict that undermines the integrity of the Board of Education? So that it's, first you have to search your heart, and then you have to say, well, okay, I'm clear, but I'm not convinced that the public would presume that I don't have some affiliation that would impair my ability to act on behalf of the public. And another example, just for your consideration, I, in this hypothetical, have spent my adult life advocating for youth athletics. I finally get elected to the Board of Education where I can do something about it. And the vote in front of the board is, should we put lights up at the high school football field, which you've done.
You're dating yourself here, Tom. You remember those battles? It was over a decade ago.
So is it a conflict of interest when I finally get on the board to vote in favor of those lights or whatever you think, or maybe I was on the PTO and a PTO issue comes up? Is that a conflict of interest? And my answer is no, because you're elected to the board for who you are. And you're not achieving any selfish goal if you get lights up in the high school football field. You're achieving a goal that you think is in the public interest. So as we look at this issue of conflict of interest, it's always really separating your personal interests from your interest on behalf of the community. And when you're expressing an interest on behalf of the community, or you've been involved in activities on behalf of the community that now somehow come before the Board of Education, it's perfectly appropriate for you to vote to promote that public good in your mind. Not everyone thinks lights on the football field are public good. In fact, there are zoning cases going on right now about that in some districts. But just to close this out, when should a board member call the principal with a concern on behalf of a teacher? When is that appropriate? Never, that's good. That's the right answer. Never. I'm sure you're all sensitive to the fact that as parents, you have every right to be engaged on behalf of your children, but don't kid yourself when you walk into a school building. It's what I have in my mind is like in the banks they have the silent alarm. You walk in to a school building, everyone knows a board member's there, and so you just have to kind of bend over backwards. And to be clear, you're there in your role as a parent and not acting on behalf of the board. And when you have questions in your role as board members, because of your special status as board members, you have to be so careful. You go through Kathy. And I'm sure that is the protocol here, right? That
Goes to the chair.
Oh,
And then,
fair enough. And finally, on it's not a comfortable answer, but the right answer is that board member, if that board member wants to sit on that grievance hearing, there's really not, it's not improper. You can say it's not a good decision, but it's not improper. So, scenario 3. You run into an acquaintance at the post office, and she complains that her son's 4th grade teacher has not returned homework to her students in 2 months. Of course, you want to help her. But after reviewing board policies, you determine that there's no board policy on whether and when teachers must return homework to students. You check with the other board members on whether they've received similar complaints about this teacher. They have not. Do you share this information with the superintendent? I'm sorry? Well, what's your opinion?
Probably not. That's like, doesn't get better. Is totally about to feedback.
I don't know. What is it? 2 months. No homework for 2 months? It seems pretty serious. What were you going to say?
Talk to the teacher first.
So you've raised a very important point. The subtext here is you want to help, but the appropriate way to help a person with a problem like this is to help them understand that you're just a board member. And that's not your department. You've mistaken me for someone who's important. There's a chain of command. If you talk to the teacher, if you talk to the principal, if you talk to the assistant superintendent, that is, you're helping that member of the public by helping them understand your role, which has enormous importance as a collective and no authority as an individual, with that of the operational issues that are governed by the teacher, the principal, the assistant superintendent, and the superintendent. So now we've decided how you're going to help that person. You're going to help that person understand the chain of command, and good luck. But have we decided that you shouldn't tell the superintendent about this teacher who hasn't returned homework in 2 months? And what if you hear that a teacher is using sexual innuendo?
Well, that's it.
Oh, that's a different level, is it? Okay, well, I agree, it's a different level, but where along that continuum do you say, I will or I won't share that information with the superintendent? It's up to you. See, some of these questions are just more, you have to decide. And, but it's always appropriate. If you hear something that causes you concern, there's never a circumstance where it's inappropriate for you to share that information with the superintendent. You just have to draw those judgments. Is this trivial? Or is this something that could be serious? And so I'd like to share that so that Kathy has the benefit of that information. You benefit the superintendent because you hear things in the community. And when you hear things that are of concern, it's completely appropriate for you to share that information with the superintendent.
Yeah, so I actually, in scenarios like that, I think I would go to the principal first in a situation like that, you know? Me, like I would go to a principal first if I had, because I would have.
Would you talk you into going to Kathy first?
Go to Kathy first? Yeah. I would go to the teacher first.
As a board member? Oh, no, as a parent.
Oh,
I think we have to clarify.
No, I'm talking about like the sexual, if it gets to that type of a level.
I'd go right to the superintendent.
Okay.
And the reason for this, but again, my disclaimer, I've not been elected to anything recently. You have to decide. But individual board members talking to individual administrators about circumstances is in my mind problematic. They all work for Kathy. And Kathy ultimately has to make these decisions. What if you tell the principal? And the principal doesn't do anything.
Right.
Then you're kind of both in trouble. It's like, so anyway, my recommendation. My recommendation, but you decide how you want to handle it, is that any issue of concern should go to the superintendent, who is the chief executive officer of the board, and is also responsible for assuring that all board employees are supervised and evaluated. So the last thing on this scenario is, how and when should you report back to the parent who raised the complaint? You picked right up on that, right, Nadine? Because reporting back is really part and parcel of what in other settings would be called constituent service. Like if you write to your congressman, he says, well, I'll look into that for you. And that's how they get elected. That's fine. That's up to them. But as board members, that's not your responsibility to do constituent service. You're here as a collective. That's where you have your authority. That's where you have your responsibility. So you wouldn't want to leave, like be the emissary for this parent. Okay, here's the problem, and I'll get back to you. So you're doing great. Scenario 4, and there's only 2 left. Members of the policy committee are concerned that the number of complaints from the public have escalated, and they're considering a proposed policy that would limit the type of complaints the board will consider. This proposed policy has received a lot of public attention because some members of the public do not want to be limited in their opportunities to complain about the board. They like to complain about the board, and they don't want to be restricted. Given that fact, some board members who are not members of the policy committee want to attend the meeting of the policy committee at which the public complaints policy will be discussed. Is it a problem if a quorum of the full board attends a meeting of the policy committee?
Yes.
I don't think it's
That's a yes?
I don't think it's an issue, because they can attend, but just not as a member of the policy committee. So like, If I'm on the policy committee, if I attend the policy committee meeting,
Yeah.
I can listen and just take it all in. I can't speak as a member of the policy committee or a member of the board. Everyone's just there as like another
Right.
participant.
In fact, along those lines, when this comes up, I say, well, where do you sit?
With the public.
The arrangement of the furniture in these circumstances. And because the issue is whether the policy committee meeting has morphed into a meeting of the board. And as soon as board members show up and act as board members as opposed to observers, as you described, then that's the danger. So in one district, they would say, oh yeah, we just come up, Sam, you know, but the other districts are more careful and appropriately so. Those board members are, in that context, members of the public. They're free, and it's not an FOI issue unless you let them work. There's an explicit provision in the Freedom of Information Act saying that if a quorum of one public body attends a meeting properly posted by another public body, there's no need for a separate posting. And so when you go to a Board of Finance meeting, a quorum is there, it's fine. But we just have to be rigorous in making sure that board members who attend these meetings that would otherwise be a quorum of the board, but they're not on that committee, don't have special privileges. Now, if the public is permitted to speak, then the board members who are visiting can speak there. And then the last thing, and maybe I'll just mention it, is it legal to limit the type of complaint the board will consider? All I'll say on that is that there are First Amendment implications whenever you open a forum for public comment. And in my experience, I have seen what I describe as happy talk policies, where the board public comment policy invites the public to say nice things, but no criticism of any board member and any board employee will be permitted. And that's a per se violation of the First Amendment, because that's what we call viewpoint discrimination. If the topic is, you can limit the topic. This is a budget hearing. We're not here to talk about, whatever else. That's fine. But as soon as you restrict people based on their viewpoint on the topic that's the subject of the forum, then you're running into a First Amendment problem. Interestingly, boards are all over the place in terms of public comment. I think it's implicit that public comment, and I noted there was no public comment tonight, but it's implicit that public comment should relate to the Farmington Public Schools. We had recently in another district, someone would come and rail against things completely unrelated to that school district. And so they had to rein it. So, but that's the forum. So I'm presuming that you have public comment for people to comment, and you welcome their comment on the operation of the Farmington Public Schools. But if you let people say nice things, you have to let people say critical things. And then, scenario 5, mislabeled 6. A good friend of a board member sends the board member an email marked personal and confidential to the board member's personal email. In that email, the friend of the board member complains to the board member that a teacher was mean to her daughter. A reporter makes an FOI request of all board members for a copy of any email sent or received from a third party during a specified time period, which time period includes the email in question. So, personal friend, private email, but it has to do with the teacher being mean. Is that email a public record? Do you think it's a public record?
I think so because of the topic specifically.
So, in fact, back to the first handout, when we look at the caution about email, the definition of a public record is in the first paragraph, and a public record is defined very broadly. Any recorded data or information relating to the conduct of the public's business, prepared, used, owned, received, or retained by public agency. So as you say, if it deals with the Board of Education, and you're a board member and you receive it, it's a public record. Now, in this particular case, would the reporter be entitled to the email about the teacher being mean to the daughter?
Probably not.
Probably not.
Is it personnel issue?
It's a FERPA issue.
Right.
Right. In other words, that is now student information
Okay.
because they may be your friend, but they have a daughter who has a concern with the school district. So I just use this example to draw the distinction between what is a public record, and then the next question is it subject to disclosure? And there are 27 exemptions under the Freedom of Information Law, most of which never help. But so you have to go on the premise that if it has to do with board business and I'm engaged in an email, even receiving an email, you don't even have to respond, and it's still a public record, because as the definition states, it's any recorded information relating to the public's business received by or created by. So I use this example really to help you consider whether you want to tell your friends to be careful. The phone still works, but as soon as they write an email, it's recorded information, and if it has to do with the public's business, you're stuck. You don't have a choice in the matter. There was a terrible situation in another district where a board member and a friend were back and forth on a matter of great public concern in a flippant and disrespectful way. A reporter asked for those emails, and they all had to be disclosed. I'll just end with a question. I think, Bill, you said that this board is good about not texting during board meetings.
Yeah.
Could a text be subject to FOI?
Absolutely.
Any recorded information, and in fact, it can also create an illegal meeting. We were dealing with this one district, and it was very convenient. The superintendent had a text list with all the board members on it, a group text. And so superintendent could text the board members, and the board members could text back. And it just like this ongoing illegal meeting. So texts are subject to all the same rules, including the same reply all problem that you can have a communication that comes to all the board members by electronic means. Interestingly, that language in the statute, by electronic means or otherwise, was written in 1975. And what do you think it referred to? Conference calls. That's what it meant in 1975. But now in 2024, there's a whole new body of law on emails and searches and what's a diligent search and so on and so forth. But I just would leave you with the caution, and there's information in that handout that you just have to be super careful about emails, and help your friends be super careful as well. Well, those are my scenarios. I'm happy to answer any questions. I know you have other items on the agenda, but I just want to
Open it up for questions.
free legal advice.
Are you here for free time?
Yes.
You mentioned several times illegal meeting, what constitutes illegal,
Yes.
things to watch out for, they might not think.
Right.
Where do caucus rules come into
Oh, I'm
play?
happy to answer that. The definition of meeting excludes certain things. And exclusions include collective bargaining, strategy or negotiations with regard to collective bargaining. That's your internal discussion, as well as the actual negotiations. They don't need to be posted. Another is a chance or social gathering. So if y'all go to a retirement party, it's not a meeting. but you have to be careful not to all hang out at the bar and talk about board business, because that would be different. Caucus of the members of a single political party is excluded from the definition of meeting. Now, for the party that has fewer than a quorum, it's irrelevant, because it's never a problem. But for the party that has a quorum of the board, a caucus is permitted, but there's a wrinkle, and that is that the definition talks about excluding from the definition of meeting discussion among members of a single political party who may also compose a quorum. But where people have gotten in trouble is that they've had that meeting, that non-meeting, this caucus, and had the town chairman of that political party in that meeting, or the mayor, or whatever.
Right.
At that point, the commission has ruled that it's no longer within the four corners of that statutory definition of caucus. So those meetings have been declared illegal. The clean caucus, even of the members of a single political party, without others present, and that without others present includes the superintendent, that's excluded from the definition of meeting. And the last one is a personal search committee. Boards can create a search committee for an executive level position. And the operation of that committee is outside of FLI as well. And that's for an executive level position, which the commission has ruled high school principal. Typically it's for the superintendent, but boards can create these committees. And that, though, once they're created, and if they're in the process of engaging in a search, like collective bargaining or caucuses, those are not considered meetings that have to be posted.
Really? It was awesome.
Well, I'm so
Really appreciate your time.
Meet the new board
Really,
members.
really great.
See the experienced board members, and Kathy has my number, so I'll look forward to
Of course.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. So we're going to go back to item 5B, we'll call it, whatever, federal fund. Okay. All right, we're returning back to paragraph 5 of our agenda. We'll go to item 5B. Now, I'll say the package that I have does not have this, one of the things that was emailed to me isn't clear. I have two 5Bs, the federal funding summary, and they have the Tools for Schools IAQ. But we're going to go with federal funding summary. Dan?
Sure.
I'll show you.
So, at last month's Board of Ed meeting, there was I'll say there was a thought exercise, a query about what would happen if the Department of Education ceased and there was no more federal funding, and the impact it would have on Farmington Public Schools. So this slide is a summary of the funding that we get through federal grants. All in all, our budget was, $79.5 million. We get about $1.5 million from federal funding. We get 1.6 or so in state funding as well. So without state or federal funding, the town would need to come up with approximately, $83 million to fund the current services that were budgeted this year. For purposes of federal, it's 1.5 million, and you can see that that's broken down to these various grants. And those grants are determined through, government allocation and district demographics. So, for example, Title I grants are there to support students who come from, low-income families. And so a lot of times with Title I grants, there's a perception that, districts are considered Title I districts, and they can be, but schools, within a town can also get a Title I designation. Title II focuses on, professional development. Title III focuses on English language learners. Title IV is kind of a more of an open-ended one, covers a few different categories. And IDEA covers special education, and then Perkins really covers career technology education. So those are really the categories there. The ESSER funds were the ones that came out of, obviously, COVID that are expiring. So those funds, we won't be continuing those funds kind of moving there. So it's really less than 2% would be of the total budget. So about 1.5 million is the impact that we get from the federal government.
Thank you, Dan. Any questions?
What did you say was for the state?
State was 1.6, and so just to kind of as a reference, when you get your monthly financial statement, at the end there's a very detailed summary of breakdown of federal grants, state grants, local, and so on.
I think this is really good information for the public as we go into the budget process. I mean, it is part of all of our, it's part of every, monthly update. It's also part of our budget book, but it's still something that I think, what people are concerned about, we should have this information, I think, in front of mind as we think about budget challenges in the upcoming year. The money that's encumbered by ESSER and ARPA, those are grants that we are not going to be in other words, the things that we're covering with that money will not be carried over into next year's operating, right?
Yeah, yes, unless it was determined to stay in the budget, but then at that point, it would be
regular.
Local funding
Right.
would have to pick up that expense.
Okay. All right. Okay. Anybody else? Thanks, Dan.
You're welcome.
Next item is tools for schools.
So I want to invite Sam Kilpatrick, our Director of Facilities, to come up to assist me with this presentation.
And I just will add for Tools for Schools, we have implemented that for many, many years in Farmington, but more recently, new state level mandates have set forth that we are required now annually. Each local and regional Board of Ed will provide for a uniform inspection and evaluation program of indoor air quality within each school building using the EPA's Indoor Air Quality Tools for Schools program. So even though we've used it for many years here in Farmington, now it has become a mandate, and the requirement is related to Connecticut General Statute 10-220D, Public Act 22-118, and Public Act 23-167. And so part of this requirement is that we have to need to present to the Board of Education at a regular meeting and make the reports available to the public. So you would expect that this would come to you annually. And so I'll hand this over to Sam and Dan.
So just once again, as a historical, as Kathy was talking about, while we had done this, the requirement had gone from every 5 years, and then they switched it to every 3 years, and then again, they update again now to make it annually. And working through that part, and then to that point of now doing it as an annual presentation at Board of Education, and also posting results on the website. And so we'll kind of talk about that a little bit in there as kind of more of some of the details into the statute. So there are these required checklists that each school requires to go through: buildings and grounds, waste management, ventilation, integrated pest management, food service, and health officials. There's also teacher checklists that go through, and each school convenes an indoor air quality IAQ committee to go through and do the walkthroughs of the schools. So not to overwhelm you with paper, here are all the individualized school results that are here. Once again, we're working, they're all going to get scanned, and they'll be through the school on the website, through our, within our facilities website, that they'll be there. And so we're hopefully to have those, along actually with this presentation, linked onto that page in the next day or two, But if anybody is really interested and wants to do a deep dive, or we have that available as well. Sam's going to talk just a little bit about just kind of summarizing a little bit of some of the results that we have here.
So, is this on?
Yeah.
All right. The light isn't working, so. Yeah, as Kathy mentioned, we've done this for years. In my time, I've been here 4 years. We've already done it 2 other times. So really, it's just the annual is really the only difference for us, with the exception of some different forms that Dan talked about that we're asked to do this time. Interestingly, the teacher checklist wasn't part of this new regulation, but it's really been an integral tool for us through the years. So we did implement that as well this year. That goes out as a Google form through the principals. So we worked with the head custodian group, the principal group, and they really spearheaded this whole thing, brought together the IAQ committees, and we got some valuable responses back. So we're in the process now of taking that, boiling it down to further investigate any of the issues that are listed or clarifications that are needed. The majority of the items focused on room temperature, as you can imagine, which, again, even on that end, we have to look further into that. A hot room at Westwoods is a little different situation than a hot room at Noah Wallace. So the Westwoods could go in as a work order. It could be a building management system thing that we have to fix. Whereas Noah Wallace, that's something that will obviously be addressed through a capital type project like what we brought forward with the HVAC projects through capital. Additionally, there were some general cleanliness items, so head custodians are going to work to check in on those, follow up on them, and put them in as work orders. We also have major projects, so some of these items you may see, there's a section where it talks about shades. We might find out that we have some broken shades in a room, and you'll see that we have a major project that addresses that coming up.
So some of the other statutes that have been updated is now increasing the frequency of radon testing in the schools. We've talked about obviously doing the tools for schools on an annual basis, also a revised timeline for HVAC assessments, and even those are constantly also getting updated. And then the emphasis on the government submission, which is posting on the websites, coming to Board of Ed meetings and such. Our radon testing, which last occurred in 2021, they've now moved it to a shorter time span, but we're kind of grandfathered in. So we're still within the time frame to do it. Having said that, we're going to look to still kind of do it to try to kind of meet into that timelines there, just to want to, making sure we're proactive. Obviously, student safety and overall health and is important. And so we don't want to just, be at the level of compliance. We want to make sure we're looking at it thoughtfully and once again, looking after the safety of students. So, and then Sam's going to talk a little bit more about the HVAC assessments and kind of that the requirement, but also our larger plan that we have here in Farmington.
Great. Just to tag on as well about that radon, we're sitting in a new building. We have, it's 19 months within a new building that you have to establish initial testing as well. So high school will be part of that process as well. For the HVAC assessments, you may remember we had a capital allocation last year to start conducting these HVAC assessments, which originally were due at the end of this month, which there was an uproar that wasn't feasible, was pushed out a year, and now there's actually a much more implementable timeline where we have 20% of schools are due at the end of 2027, and then 20% each year until 2031 when you have to have them complete. That said, we've gone ahead with the 4K4 schools here in district because there is a stipulation within the regulation that to be available for any HVAC grant that you'd need to have this done. So we're in the process at Noah Wallace, East Farms, Union, and West District, and we should have that done shortly. That's really about it. Be glad to answer any questions if there are any about it.
Anybody? You've fulfilled your statutory duty.
Well, I will when I fill out the state form that says that I presented to the board tomorrow. Thank you.
Professional appointments?
No professional appointments, resignations, or retirements in this month's report.
Okay. Deeper learning?
Just for deeper learning, once again, there are just so many impressive deeper learning updates to share with you and our community. So as you review these updates, you're going to see examples of the importance of deeper learning experiences for all students K-12 aligned to our vision of the global citizen, framework for teaching and learning, and our core beliefs.
Thank you, Kathy. All right. Forgot what we said. We're going to move up.
Yeah, we can move that up.
All right, given that we have some executive session work to do, and there's people in the audience whose schedule we would like to accommodate, I'd like to get a motion, if I could, to move item 9, executive session, up, to make it the new item 6 of our agenda, and so that we can discuss, for the discussion of 2 central office administrator appointments.
Motion? Second.
Comments, discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention. Okay, we're going to go to executive session at 8:32.
Could you read that motion?
I'll read it, yeah.
Because of,
Sure, I'll read it. So for the record, the motion is to adjourn the meeting to executive session at 8:32 as permitted by Connecticut General Statute, Section 1-225A, for the following purposes as allowed by Section 1-206A, that is, discussion concerning the appointment of 2 central office administrators. Going to get a motion for that?
Motion?
Thank you.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstention. Okay. We're in executive session. Okay, we're all back. Can I get a motion to return to public session at 9:22?
Motion? Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we're back in. Okay, so continuing along with the change in the agenda item, I need to move up items 7D to make it new item 4, whatever. Move it up in the agenda, you know what I'm talking about. They'll fix it in post. Can I get a motion to do that, please?
Motion? Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, so now we're considering item 7D. And I need a motion to approve the appointment of Eric Martin to the position of Director of Curriculum and Instructor with the effective date of January 21st, 2025.
Motion?
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Congratulations, Eric, welcome.
Welcome. Welcome.
And now I need a motion to approve the appointment of Dan Zatoon to the position of Assistant Superintendent of Finance and Operations effective December 10th, 2024.
Motion? Second.
All those, any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Congratulations, Dan. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Moving on with our agenda. Will be item 6A, budget impact, budget update.
getting you right to work.
Love it. I wouldn't have it any other way. I would like to thank the board for your faith in me, and I've just been so excited and glad that this partnership has kind of been created. You always take a leap of faith whenever you take a position, and every day I'm super excited to come and work for Farmington. And obviously, with it's been a challenging time for myself and the family, and you have all embraced the whole Zatoon family and made me part of the family immediately. And we're so, I myself, but even my whole family, is so appreciative of everything you've done. So we're grateful and glad to be a part of this family and continue to look to do outstanding things for the Farmington Public Schools. So thank you.
You're welcome, Dan. Thank you.
Budget impact. So really key piece there, as we talk, and we'll do the October financials later on in the budget, but just a couple things there. Overall, taking a look to see where we are with this year. We have had a couple good things happening, mostly through kind of the state right now. We don't have the full details yet, but we're looking to be able to get a little bit more money through excess cost grant through special education. There's a threshold that districts are expected to pay, and then after that, the state kind of reimburse at a certain rate. So that's looking a little bit more favorable. You know, a little challenging is part of the reason it's favorable is because our overall costs are increasing. But helping that piece of it out. And then also the state has given us our reimbursement rate for magnet school tuition at a little bit higher there. So we're going to be expected some extra revenue there. That should help offset some of the overall, expenses that we have there. So those are looking there. And so overall, we feel good that we're on pace and doing well for this year's budget.
Dan, with the last meeting, we had talked about conversations you've had with specialty. Can you kind of give us an update on that?
Yeah, so, specialty, we've had the conversations, and, they recognize that, even from the September meeting, Mike Turner, when we attended, that was not the service that they expect for us here at specialty. And so, after we've had some conversations, we take a look, things have, kind of as they've kind of leveled off and settled, and we're seeing some consistent service right now. Obviously, there's going to always sometimes be some challenges with bus shortage and stuff, but we're feeling good about how the operations are going. But specialty is planning to give us a credit of $7,000 toward back. As a credit there, as a kind of a gesture of goodwill and wanting to maintain a positive relationship with Farmington to help offset some of the craziness and of those first few challenging weeks.
Okay. I'm going to open it up to the board for any questions on this. I know people have lots of questions. Angela, start with you at your end. Work our way down.
Yeah, so Dan, I just brought up the contract again, the bus contract, because I was trying to understand when the discussion came out. We were hearing there was a $4,000 credit. Now you said $7,000. So I'm just going to read a few things on the contract just so everyone's on the same page. There's rules of engagement and then kind of rules. One of them is no student shall arrive at school more than 15 minutes prior to the school opening in the morning. No student shall remain at school waiting for transportation home for more than 15 minutes after school has dismissed. And the second item is after-school vehicle shall not leave the school until at least 5 minutes following dismissal. No student will be dropped off at his or her stop her bus stop later than 15 minutes after leaving the school except under extraordinary conditions. And then it further goes down for the invoice and payment, we'll get itemized invoices. And it says under invoice and payment, if in the event one or more vehicles do not operate in compliance with this agreement over each independent route on any school day, the entire daily cost of such vehicle shall be deducted from the contractor's invoice charges. So I guess what I'm trying to understand is that $7,000, what is the daily cost of a vehicle for any, on an independent route on any school day, to understand what that $7,000 represents? Because if you're telling me a bus costs a daily route is $700, and that $7,000 represents 10 of those infractions for September, I would probably say that $7,000 isn't enough, because I think there was more than just reading those two, and honestly, I probably could go over it a little bit more fine-tooth comb. Those are just blatant ones, after 50 minutes after school dismisses. I mean, I think we all agree probably that first month there were a lot of occasions where it was over 50 minutes when children were getting home. So I guess my simple question is, what is the daily cost of a vehicle? Or can we find that out to understand what that $7,000 represents so we can articulate back to even know? I don't know if $7,000 seems like a good amount or not.
Sure.
And at the same time, I want to have a good relationship with them too, but I think it's good to have some accountability in terms of being able to measure progress. So, this is pretty clear cut. If we know how many times they were late and how many infractions they have and what the daily vehicle is, that's a pretty easy equation. We could all kind of then be able to rattle off, so.
Sure, and so just to clarify, I believe, and I'll confirm, I believe the bus, for the bus, it's $540. I don't believe that's just, for the rate, but the key there is when we did a review of the contract, when we reached out to Shipman to kind of do the analysis of it, as you read the provision, really it's when they violate some of those provisions, it's like $100 fine, per violation. For them to get the full cost of a bus for the day for that, that money, it would be, the bus not showing up, the bus, not, it would be there. So the provisions are there that they could be, like I said, so that's when we kind of looked at each of those fines, or each of those infractions as kind of like a $100 fine of kind of be there. And so when we looked through those pieces, we went through kind of the spreadsheets that we had for the time. And then, the reality is, is some conversations there. There were some that's like, okay, wait, let's look at the GPS system. It was, 48 minutes. When did they actually leave the school? When were those pieces there? And so, what we didn't want to do for both cost and both, relationship is we didn't want to sit there and have like the attorneys having to go through all the GPS things to see, because at that point, whatever costs you're potentially, getting, they're probably going right back to both of us for legal fees and time and such. So a lot of it was just kind of looking at, kind of the clear violations that like no one was going to argue about, right? That no one was going to, an hour and a half, 2 hours, the bus driver getting lost or something like that. So those were the ones that we kind of looked through and went through there. And so, when we had the discussion, like I said, there was a preliminary conversation of $4,000. Then after that, there was some conversation back and forth about, is that going to be enough? And so, Specialty said, because we want to make it right, we're willing to kind of go to 7,000 and this way not have to go through, any of the pieces, and to do it as a, like I said, to do it as a credit. So this way it's also not feeling like, they're being, fined for it. They want to kind of do it proactively, just once again, out of maintaining and building this positive relationship that we'll have with them for, after this year, an additional 4 years.
So do you have at least the summary of like, so that I understand everything you just said. So like maybe they're not all infractions. So if they were all infractions at $100, that would be, 70 infractions for $7,000, but probably some of them are the daily cost of, like, do you have anything that we could summarize if we were speaking to someone about it to say like, okay, we did get a credit in September for whatever infractions of the bus being late this many times or something like that, just so that we can quantify to some extent as to like what we're getting the credit for?
Yeah, we don't, in doing it, we don't have, like, I don't have like an itemized list, which would be, Westwood's bus 11, on this day. It was kind of going through and kind of charting that and working there. Like you said, it was really, because it was really more about wanting to do it as a, like I said, as kind of a credit, as opposed to here's your itemized fine, right? Like we wanted to kind of, to have that piece of it. So, so that's why, even though we kind of, they had the conversation of saying, hey, take a look, take a look at the, the infractions, where's it at, kind of let's ballpark it, and then from there we'll kind of, work toward getting a final number that feels fair to everybody.
And if a bus didn't show up at all, we're not charged for that bus.
Correct.
Yeah, so that would not even be on the invoice. So in the times where, I know we all heard, about different buses not bringing a sports team to a sporting event or whatever might have happened, they're not on the invoice.
Yes, correct.
Right.
Well, that's actually helpful.
Yeah, that's helpful. Because I think to Angela's comments, was more concerned around, there was a lot of involvement from a board perspective. There was administrators on buses. There was teachers on buses. The amount of effort that it took in that first month, I was expecting to see a little bit more. So I'm thankful that they've relooked at that, but it would be helpful to get kind of what comprised of that. But if it's in good faith and you're comfortable with that, I'm comfortable with keeping the good relationship and keeping the good service, and you providing us the details along the way if there's anything that changes.
No, absolutely. And like I said, I do feel, it's a fair settlement. Like I said, I think, or it's a fair offer, fair credit. Once again, I've seen situations like this where, it kind of gets ugly and then, kind of gets very litigious, and then even maybe you're getting a little bit more money, but then, that relationship needs some repairing, right? And so we think that this is just kind of a good balance, and I think especially what we've seen over probably, I'd say maybe now the last 7-8 weeks of seeing consistent service and seeing, that ability to do it. And once again, with there, as we're even seeing just the general invoices, our special services transportation number is still going, but that's not through, especially that's just the need, right? Student need, meeting the needs there. So that's going a little bit there, but overall our, major buses, we're still trending much better than historically we've done through M&J and in the past. And, being able to utilize fewer buses, being able to save on fuel. So we're also finding savings, in other areas, overall there. We might not see it in the final line, like I said, because of the special services that would be there. But the transportation budget line could actually be significantly worse if it wasn't, once again, for a lot of the things that are putting into place in the specialty.
Just real quick, Bill, to follow up, are the invoicing much easier to understand and clear of what you're?
The finance office has been very happy with, the invoice, the detailing, the clarity to what it is. They would talk a lot with the previous company about, there'd be credits and invoices and things and going back and forth and needing to check, but here there's a lot more transparency, there's a lot more clarity to it. So like I said, even in that level, that relationship has been better, and I think ultimately helping, save, Farmington Public Schools more money through that transparency and clarity and invoicing.
Do you have anything, Andrea?
And my questions were similar to Angela's, and I agree with Nadine, if you're comfortable with this and that you feel that this is fair, I'm supportive of it. I think the only other things that I would add is that there's things that you can't put a price tag on that happened in the beginning of the school year. Like you can't put a price tag on safety or poor communication. So those are some of the things that I wanted to see specialty improve on, and I don't want to say be held accountable for, but that they show a good faith effort at acknowledging, our performance was unacceptable and we're going to do better. I mean, Mike Turner came up and said, I need to do better, we need to do better. And I guess the only question that I have is, we're not in the business of transportation. We hired a company, we're paying a lot of money for this company. Are you finding that you still have to kind of monitor or oversee as much? Or
no, and actually,
back away from that? Because that's your time too, which is also.
No, and I appreciate that, and I think that's a great question, and I can say, for myself, that the vast majority of any type of smaller issues are happening with especially like they're getting it much more under control to handling those situations. I can't, I'll probably jinx myself. I don't remember the last email that I've had to receive about a parent being upset about the buses, that they've gone to, specialty, they've been timely replies. Most of them have, kind of acknowledged, or most of the challenges just have been like, with driver shortages or things along those lines. But, operationally, they got, they definitely are back running running smoothly now. And so, the amount of time that, those first few weeks that I was, involved in that and the answering things has dropped tremendously, which also then, allows, for me and now an extension of Matt to be able to spend our resources on the other focus on budget, focus on, the other aspects of the role, which have been critical. So I've seen a tremendous improvement in that. And so that's, Another piece of it, we used to do weekly meetings, and now we're actually moving to bi-weekly meetings, because, before the agenda was like, all right, Tim, here we go, let's go, we got it, and now we're not seeing as many issues at this point.
And I think you'd hear the same from principals.
That was gonna be my
Because
follow-up.
as I'm talking to principals, they're all telling me, oh, so much better, and it's not, at the forefront of their work any longer, so.
Anybody else? Anybody down there? Comments, questions? All right, I'll wrap up. First of all, by saying, Dan, thank you for all your hard work in dealing with this. One of the reasons why I think the board was so supportive of your candidacy was I think you were, baptized in fire to some degree. But in the process, you earned the trust of our school community. So I think that makes that you coming here full time. We're removing the interim title a lot easier for us to do. I do want to say also thank you for getting the feedback. Just so everybody's clear, you made the comment we heard it was 4, now it's 7. It was 4 until we pushed back. Kathy and I spoke last week.
Absolutely.
And she reported to me that they wanted to come back at 4, and after getting consensus from everyone, and I felt very much the same way, we pushed back because we felt it was important to do that.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you carrying the message in a way that was heard and responded to favorably, so well done there. So thank you for that. And I would also want to echo Andrea's comments as well, that, there's the economic piece, which is important for certain, but it's the accountability piece as well. And I think we've seen that in the last 6 to 8 weeks, 9 weeks. You can see they are trying to do better. So, hopefully this is behind us now once and for all, and we can continue to move on forward with the partner for the next 4.5 years.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. Okay, next item on the agenda, item 6C, review, discussion, and potential action on 2025-2026 BOE meeting schedule. We discussed this at our last meeting. We moved the December meeting to Union School. Everything else has stayed the same. Anybody have any comments or questions about it? All right, hearing none, can I get a motion to approve the Board of Education 2025-2026 meeting schedule as presented?
Motion? Second?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Just,
We're doing that next.
you have to go to policy repeal.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Okay, next we have to do policy repeals. I apologize, guys. I'm kind of jumping around tonight. Losing my place. First is policy repeal 4119, personal technology repeal, second reading. Can I get a motion to approve the policies listed below, 4119 and 4123, for repeal as the second reading?
Motion? Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, sorry about that, guys. So the next would be item 7B, Kathy. Approval of updated policy 0200 5-year goals.
So, yes, so this is simply an update of policy 0200 to reflect the November meeting's approval of the 2025-2030 goals as a first reading for the policy. So you approve the goals for 25 to 30, and then we have to update the policy to reflect that.
So the policy has to reflect the goals.
Yes.
Okay. Any conversation, comments, questions? Okay. Can I get a motion to approve updated policy 0200 5-year goals for a first reading as presented?
Motion? Second?
All those signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next up, 7E, established Farmington High School graduation date.
Yes, so this is, we have, by statute, the board can approve a graduation date at any time during the school year, provided that it's the 180th day of school at the time of the approval. So at this time, we had one snow day for this year. So our last day of school will now be June 10th instead of the original date of June 9th. There is also a need, because of project graduation, to lock in a date. I think you remember from last year, we had to do the same thing. Most districts set their date very early, some of them at the very beginning of the school year, And when they do that, they lock in a date. And so in the past, when that didn't happen, we had flexibility. As school districts had snow days, everybody moved. But we are, we try to wait as long as possible because of snow days, and it's just come to the point where we have to do this earlier in the year to ensure that our project graduation goes smoothly and on the day of graduation and not a different day.
So what happens if we wind up banging out 5 school days in February?
Yes, that is absolutely a possibility. We never know what a winter's going to bring, or even spring weather could bring. It's always up in the air, and we don't know.
Well, people should know, the spring vacation is on the table at that point, right?
Usually we use everything in June 1st, and then we could go back to April, but the board really could make the decision that you don't want to go late into June and you'd rather look at April, that the policy gives that ability to look at it in different ways. I would say that if we had 5 days, first of all, you're within statute to do this now, and say we had 5 days. I think what I've discussed with the high school administration is that, that means 5 less days before graduation for students, and they would really have to work very hard to ensure that every student had every opportunity to fulfill the requirements of graduation, and that wouldn't hinder a student from graduating. That's very important to all of us.
Kathy, just to clarify, this is for the graduation date, not necessarily the last day of school.
It's just graduation day. Yeah, it's just graduation day.
So the elementary schools, even the rest of the high school, could still continue on to its...
Kindergarten through 11th grade will continue the 5 days. It's only the graduating class. But I still, as superintendent, always worry about those students who might be at a point that they need as much time as possible to meet those last graduation requirements. So that is something that I know counseling and the administration here has been very clear with me to say that they're going to do everything possible if that were the scenario. Let's hope it's not. But if it is, that's how we would handle that. But it's very important the whole purpose of Project Graduation is to have that all-night graduation party the day of graduation and not a different day. It would defeat the purpose of that very important event that keeps students safe on their graduation day.
Okay, any other questions? Can I get a motion to approve June 10th, 2025 as the Farmington High School graduation day?
Motion?
Second?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Okay, next is the approval of the October 2024 financial statement. Dan?
Yeah, thanks. So, we were able to do our October financial statement. Last time we weren't able to complete it yet, but the insurance numbers hadn't come in yet, so we'll have that. And then once again, the goal will be for hopefully the January meeting to be able to do November and December and then kind of be caught up. Just taking a look, just highlighting, like I said before, with the budget update and impact, we're trending well to be able to finish off the year well. Just a couple areas of note. Obviously, the teacher salary always tends to still kind of keep it balanced there. A couple areas though that I point out that might be some concerns or some questions is you'll see nurses down 176,000, and just to clarify for that is that's not additional nurses like school nurses there. These are nurses that we need for students with high medical needs and IEPs, and so for those increases. So there. Having said that, we anticipate, as I talked before, the increase in excess costs grant that the state will kind of help defer some of that, and so for some students where it gets through threshold. The other area that's a little high you'll see is summer teachers, which really is a misnomer. We're looking to change. It's really about the whole summer school program. And I'm looking at that there. What we're looking to do is identify some invoices that got put under summer school that probably should be better directed in like private tuition or in certain cases professional services like the OT that we do. And so you'll see while the invoices and the expenses still exist, they'll just be recategorized in different areas and putting it there. So just to be consistent with what we've done with some of the past practices there. But you'll see kind of right now, at least ahead with the transportation services, and then gasoline, we're doing better than expected. Like I said, that you're probably going to see a little fluctuation over the next couple of months with, special individualized transportation costs going up. But that's, overall the major things. I don't know if anyone has any other questions. Obviously public, tuition and some of the other special services costs run high, kind of like they historically do.
Any questions? Sure.
For Excel, it looks like a big number there, but maybe I'm missing something. Like projected deficit in that program?
So, for Excel, it's interesting because they, when they kind of start running their budget, there's a lot of initial expenses that come up, and they haven't, gotten the tuition will keep coming in. So you'll probably see that level off. Historically, I think probably by January, February, that'll probably get, to level, and then actually you're going to start starting to increase and kind of, finishing off in the black in there. So that's just kind of a cyclical piece of where their expenses go, and then the tuitions. It's expected tuition for, for those, but once again, they've kind of paid on a monthly basis. So they'll start getting more revenue each month that will offset those expenses.
Any other questions? Can I get a motion to approve the October 2024 financial statement report as presented?
Motion. Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next up on the agenda is the report of the board chair. Our next meeting is Monday, January 13th, I believe. We are at the end of the year, calendar year. It's been a long year. It's been a challenging year, but also an exciting year. We were able to open up this building. We brought some new people in. It's really been an excellent, 2024 was a good year for the Farmington Public Schools. So I thank Kathy and everyone in the district office and the entire school district for all their hard work this year. I wish everybody here a happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Hanukkah, whatever you celebrate, and we'll see you next year. And with that, I get a motion to adjourn.
Motion. A second.
Adjourn.